You are standing in a checkout line with a cart full of ordinary food. The screen says $100. You tap your card, and somewhere a very long queue of hands starts moving. The receipt prints a list of products, but it never prints the second list, the list of everyone who was already waiting inside that $100 before you even reached the register. A farmer 4 states away, a trucking dispatcher, a refrigerated warehouse you will never see, a bank you did not know you were paying, and at the very end of the line, holding the smallest cup, the store itself. This is the price of normal, and today we are following $100 of groceries from the tap of your card to the last penny that finds a home. By the end, you will know who gets paid, in what order, and why the supermarket, the most visible character in this story, keeps almost none of the money. First, the honest disclaimer that most videos skip. Every store, every region, and every year is a little different, so this episode is built on public numbers, government data, industry surveys, and the audited financial statements of the biggest grocer in America. Where sources disagree, you will hear both numbers, and where a figure is a reasonable industry average rather than a law of physics, we will say so. Here is the single most important number to hold in your head. For every dollar an American supermarket rings up, somewhere between 1 and 3 cents typically survives as net profit. In 2023, the industry average was about 1.6 cents, the lowest since 2019. Not 16 cents, 1.6. Hold that thought, because everything else in this episode explains where the other 98 cents go. Start with the biggest slice by far, the products themselves. Roughly 70 of your $100 goes right back out the door to pay for the goods on the shelves. The industry calls this the cost of goods sold, and it is the reason a supermarket is better understood as a relay station than a destination. Your money does not stop at the store, it passes through. So follow those $70 upstream. The federal government actually measures this journey. The Department of Agriculture publishes something called the Food Dollar Series, an annual autopsy of every dollar Americans spend on domestically produced food. For food bought in stores, the 2023 numbers show that farms received about 24.3 cents of every dollar. The other 75.7 cents went to everything that happens between the field and your fridge. Sit with that for a moment. The people who actually grow the food collect about 1/4 of the grocery dollar. 3/4 of what you pay is not for food. It is for the moving, cleaning, cutting, cooking, freezing, wrapping, storing, shipping, shelving, and selling of food. Economists call it the marketing share, which is a bland name for one of the largest logistics operations on Earth. Break that share open, and the residents inside are surprisingly ordinary. Processors take grain, milk, and animals and turn them into flour, cheese, and frozen dinners. Packagers wrap it all in plastic, cardboard, and aluminum. Truckers and railroads move it, hour after hour, across the whole map. Warehouses chill it and stage it, and the trade layer, wholesalers and retailers, takes its cut for distribution and shelf space. In 2023, wholesale and retail trade together collected about 26.1 cents of the average food dollar, more than the farm share itself. The middle of the chain, the part with no face and no advertising, quietly out-earns the farm. Take one banana as a biography. It was grown on a farm in the tropics, cut green, washed, boxed, and paid for at a price set months earlier by contract. It crossed an ocean in a refrigerated container, held at exactly the temperature that keeps it asleep. It docked, cleared inspection, and rode a truck to a ripening room, where carefully warmed air turned it the yellow you expect. Then another truck, a distribution center, a pallet, a stock room, and finally the display table where you judged it in half a second. Every hand in that chain was paid from the few cents you handed over. The store's own share of a banana is famously close to invisible. Multiply that biography by the tens of thousands of different products a large supermarket carries, and you begin to see what the marketing share actually buys. Zoom all the way out, and the picture becomes even more lopsided. Counting restaurants as well as grocery stores, Americans spent about $2.6 trillion on food and beverages in 2023. Across that entire mountain of money, farms received about 15.9 cents per dollar. That share slipped by another 1/10 of a cent in 2023, continuing a slide that has run, with interruptions, for decades. Nobody in this chain is a cartoon villain, and that is what makes the story interesting. Each link charges a margin that looks modest on its own. Stack enough modest margins on top of each other, and you get a grocery bill where the food itself, the actual biological calories, is a minority shareholder. Now come back to the store, because the $30 or so that it keeps as gross margin has its own line of claimants, and they are pushier than the farmers. Claimant number 1 is labor. Somebody stocked the shelf at 5 in the morning. Somebody sliced the deli meat, iced the salmon, mopped aisle 7, and answered the intercom. Industry surveys have long put store payroll at roughly 10 to 12 cents of every sales dollar, with employee benefits adding a few cents more. Together, people costs historically consume around half of everything the store earns above the wholesale price of the goods. That is the single biggest expense the store actually controls, which is exactly why self-checkout machines exist. Every kiosk is a bet that you will do a cashier's job for free. Claimant number 2 is the building. A supermarket is a warehouse that pretends to be a shop, and it is stunningly expensive to run. Rent or property costs, utilities, insurance, maintenance, and above all, refrigeration. A grocery store is one of the hungriest buildings in retail because much of it is essentially a giant open refrigerator. Those compressors hum every hour of every day, whether the store sells anything or not. Remember that phrase, whether it sells anything or not, because fixed costs are the quiet villain of this entire episode. Claimant number 3 never sends an invoice, because claimant number 3 is loss itself. The industry calls it shrink. Shrink is the gap between the inventory a store paid for and the inventory it actually got to sell. Bananas that browned before anyone bought them, yogurt that expired on the shelf, a dropped jar of pasta sauce, and theft, both by strangers and, uncomfortably, by staff. The National Retail Federation found that shrink cost American retailers about $112 billion in 2022, averaging about 1.6% of sales. Internal and external theft together accounted for roughly 2/3 of it. On your $100 basket, call it $1.60 gone before the store can even try to earn a profit. The store prices that expectation into everything, which means honest customers permanently pay a small tax on behalf of everyone who steals. Before the next claimant, notice how the store fights for its $30 in plain sight. The milk lives at the back corner, so the journey passes 100 temptations. The rotisserie chicken is sometimes sold near or even below cost, a loss leader whose whole job is to get you in the door on a Tuesday. The shelf at your eye level rents for more than the shelf at your ankle, and brands compete hard for it. The bakery smell near the entrance is not an accident of architecture. None of this is a conspiracy. It is a business with a 2% margin, using every legal centimeter of the building to defend it. Claimant number 4 is the one you triggered yourself, back at the register. The tap. That half second of convenience is a financial transaction with its own supply chain. The card network, the bank that issued your card, and the processor connecting the store to both of them each take a slice. Together, those slices are called swipe fees, and on a typical card purchase, they run somewhere between 1.5% and 3.5%. In 2024, American merchants paid a record $187.2 billion in card processing fees, according to the Nielsen report, up from about $172 billion the year before. A merchant coalition that counts network and processor charges more broadly puts the 2024 figure even higher, at more than $236 billion. Either way, the direction is the same, up, relentlessly. Here is why a 2% fee terrifies a grocer when it would barely register at a jewelry store. The jeweler marks products up by half or more. The grocer nets 1 or 2 cents on the dollar. A 2% swipe fee does not nibble at a grocer's profit. It can swallow the entire profit on a transaction and ask for seconds. When the fee on a sale rivals the profit of the sale, the bank quietly becomes a business partner who shows up for every customer and never stacks a single shelf. This is the hidden mechanism of the whole episode, so let it sink in. Small percentages are not small when they repeat. A supermarket rings up thousands of transactions a day. A fee of a few cents here, 1.5% there, multiplied across millions of items a year, decides whether the store makes money at all. Grocery economics is not a story about big numbers. It is a story about tiny numbers, repeated at terrifying scale. So look at what is actually left. After the goods, the people, the building, the loss, and the fees, the store keeps its famous sliver. The industry surveys say between 1 and 3 cents per dollar, about 1.6 cents in 2023, closer to 2 in better years. You do not have to take a survey's word for it, because the biggest grocer in the country publishes its books. Kroger operates supermarkets across most of America, and its audited numbers are public. In its 2024 fiscal year, Kroger rang up about $147 billion in total sales. Its net earnings for that same year were about $2.7 billion. Do the division and you get roughly 1.8 cents of profit per dollar of sales. One of the most powerful retailers on earth, running one of the most sophisticated logistics networks ever built, keeps less than 2 cents of your dollar. That is not a company being modest. That is the shape of the industry. So run the full $100 through the machine one more time, with round numbers and honest caveats. Around $70 leaves immediately to pay for the products, and everyone upstream, the farmers, processors, packagers, truckers, and wholesalers. Inside that upstream money, the growers themselves end up with roughly a quarter of your original $100. Call it $10 to $15 for the people who run the store, the stockers, cashiers, butchers, bakers, and managers. A few dollars for the building, the lights, and the endless hum of refrigeration. Between $1 and $2 evaporates as shrink before anyone can sell it. If you paid by card, somewhere between $1.50 and $3.50 goes to the payment system for the privilege of tapping instead of counting change. And when the music stops, the store pockets $1 or $2. On a good week, in a good year. Which brings us to the years that made everyone furious at the grocery store. Between January 2020 and January 2024, American food-at-home prices rose by roughly 25%. At the worst point, in the summer of 2022, grocery prices were climbing at more than 11% a year, the fastest pace in roughly 4 decades. Shoppers went looking for a villain, and the store was the only face in sight. But walk the numbers again. If supermarkets were harvesting windfall profits, the net margin line would say so. It says the opposite. Industry margins in 2023 fell back to about 1.6%, below their pandemic-era peak. By 2024, grocery inflation itself had cooled to about 1 to 2% a year. The prices did not come back down, of course. Cooling inflation does not mean falling prices. It means prices stop climbing as fast from the new, higher floor. The 25% staircase stays built. So where did the money go, if not into the store's pocket? It went where it always goes, into the chain. Farm inputs got more expensive: fertilizer, feed, fuel, and labor. Processing and packaging costs rose. Transport costs spiked. Warehouses paid more for energy and wages. And card fees, charged as a percentage of the new higher prices, grew automatically without anyone announcing a rate increase. Every link passed its increase one link downstream, and the last link in the chain was you. The register is simply the place where all of the chain's problems are added up and presented as a single number. Stores are not passive in this story, and the ways they fight back are quietly redesigning your shopping trip. They push their own store brands because the private label version of your cereal leaves more pennies behind than the famous one. They shrink the staffed counters and grow the self-checkout row, trading labor cost for your patience. They join buying alliances and squeeze suppliers, which is why a favorite brand sometimes vanishes from the shelf in the middle of a negotiation. They sell the one thing they have that nobody upstream has: knowledge of exactly what you buy, which is what a loyalty card actually harvests. And they lobby, loudly, against swipe fees, in a decades-long war between retailers and banks that most customers have never heard of. Every one of those moves exists because of the arithmetic you now know. When you keep 2 cents per dollar, you do not get rich by selling more. You get rich by losing less. Which brings us back to the receipt and the inversion this channel promised you. You thought you were buying food. Mostly, you were not. About a quarter of your money bought the contents of the cart, the actual grown, raised, and harvested food. The other 3/4 bought the system, the invisible machine of trucks, freezers, warehouses, software, wages, insurance, and fees that delivers a strawberry to a snowbound city in February and makes it feel unremarkable. The receipt lists products because products are what you can see, but the price of normal is mostly the price of everything you cannot. The next time the total makes you wince, you will at least know who is standing behind the register. All of them. If this changed how you see your grocery bill, the next episode follows a $30 food delivery order through an even stranger machine, where the store, the app, the driver, and the restaurant all fight over the same handful of dollars. Same money, different maze. Thanks for watching The Price of Normal.